Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. Today I wanted to show you the completed Dragon's Teeth tank traps. If you're new to the channel, there's a video showing sort of a work in progress, showing the original casts to make the master mold. But what I've done is set up two stands of them for a customer to review, and I wanted to give you a chance to take a look at them as well, so you could see at least how I plan on finishing them in general. Of course, there'll probably be some variations in the future, and I'll discuss that as well. So let's take a closer look. So here you can see two stands placed next to each other. There was some debate as to how to base them, and a friend of mine actually recommended I base them on an irregular base rather than these, rectangular ones, saying that it would look a little more natural on the table. And while I tend to agree with that in some respects, because they're arranged in a pretty strict row series, with relatively defined edges, and I wanted customers to be able to place them together with a nice reasonable join so that you could create a rather long, defensive area. I felt that I'd go with the rectangular base for these, but other basing would be available, of course, in the future. These are based on 1/8" hardboard, and what I did is I flocked it to match my Verdant board sets, as the customer that this is intended for has a large collection of those. And then what I did is I just went in and very sparingly foliaged them, and I'll show you some close-ups of this in just a second, but just to kind of break it up a little bit, but figuring that this area has been cleared to place the tank traps and might look a little odd with large clumps of vegetation, I just sort of dropped in a few scattered, hither and thither to just add a tiny bit of visual interest. Without trying to repeat too much from the first video, there are three sizes. You can kind of see that in profile like that. And the tank traps are, as doing a little research, and it's a little bit hard here. I'll start that over again. Tank traps are like this are supposed to be arranged in a staggered alternate fashion, so when you look at them head on, it's not an even row of them to disrupt tanks trying to line up to climb over them in a row. Now, what I discovered actually early on in the design of these is that I ended up making these in the center here just a little bit wider than these front and the back pieces. Not exactly sure how that happened when I was cutting the foam, but by the time I discovered it, I decided to just roll along with it. It adds kind of a little visual variation, which is kind of nice. There's a little top view so you can see how they look from the top, of course. But it meant that spacing them, it creates a little unevenness in the spacing, so they don't have a perfectly even staggered fashion. They're actually just a little, you can see how the rows vary as you go across. I mean, I'm being really nitpicky here, just trying to say I think it works fine, but it's not 100% historically accurate probably for their arrangement, and may not be the best tank trap defense possible for those purists who tend to look for the small mistakes. Color scheme wise, I decided to keep it with a concrete type stone interior on them, and then finish them with a sort of brassy bronze metal. I didn't want to go with a sort of silver metal, as I just didn't think it would look appropriate. And what I did is, so this is like, I think this is tin bits, excuse me, it's early in the morning, tin bits and dwarf bronze as a blended 50-50, and then given a wash to darken that and to add a little bit of color variation. I was going to dry brush these a little bit, and it really, I didn't want to make them too bright and shiny, so I ended up leaving them with sort of the washed look as well. And I've given them a pretty heavy coating of gloss clear coat, and then a matte clear coat over it to protect them from wear and tear, as this may actually receive vehicles placed on top of it, so I wanted to kind of protect the upper surfaces from them. Now, spacing of these, I discussed before, I was saying, I didn't have a 40mm base. Well, turns out I do, actually. I ended up, I forgot, it suddenly occurred to me, I had in some, one of my boxes of unfinished models, that GW, I think, had released these as part of a a special promo for their White Dwarf, and I can't remember where I got these because I don't have a subscription to White Dwarf, but came with one Terminator and one Orc Boy. I'm assuming this is an Orc Boy. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a knob. I don't think so. Might be. In any case, that meant I actually do have a 40 millimeter Terminator base. And so this gave me a chance to take a look at these models, both in terms of profile and spacing on the tank traps. As I had mentioned before, I wanted them to be accessible to 40 millimeter bases so that any of the various types of infantry sizes in 40K could move through them. And so every tank trap has been spaced just a little over 40 millimeters just to allow that to happen. Then I was taking a look at, in terms of cover that models might receive from them and behind. I'll show you a profile in just a second. But I realized that, scale is a very odd thing in these games. So here's Mr. Tippy McLean. If you're a fan of the channel, you'll recognize him. But I thought that Terminators are supposed to be like 7 or 8 feet tall or something like that, right? These are the giant Space Marines. And when you put them side by side, the head height for the Terminator is only a few millimeters, maybe taller than a standard supposedly 28 millimeter infantry from from Fantasy, and the Orc is about the same height as well. So actually, my initial speculations on the amount it would cover for a miniature is pretty universal, as these all seem to have a similar footprint. Let me show you that in profile. So here you can see sort of a model's eye view of the traps, and you can see here that that comes up right about to his head for the Terminator. These, whoops, there we go. A little bit less so, and these probably not covering very much of the model. And just to give you a sense of scale from the side as well. Give you a perspective of how much it might cover the model. It gives you a little bit of an idea as well. So they're fairly substantial on the tabletop. And just before I leave this view, one more thing is just to give it a sense of the dimensions. This is about 13.5 inches wide and about a little over 8 inches deep. So it's got a substantial footprint on the table, and I really felt like 15 as a set makes a reasonable amount to give it a look of a defensive barricade. So that's how I've ended up with this arrangement. But of course, if you purchase them unfinished and you want to build them yourself, you can arrange them in any way you desire. But I felt like this was a good, overall, like this I can drop on the table and have something that looks substantial and is reasonably large enough to, impede tanks' movement through some kind of an area on the battlefield. Unfortunately, I don't have a tank to place on here. I don't play 40K anymore, and I don't have any of my old models, so it just gives you have to use your imagination. So these will show up in the store very soon. The store is going to open. I have a new opening plan now for this year. I change it every year. I'm always trying to adapt. And so there's information on that in the newsletter on the TerranScapes website, so you might want to check that out for specific dates and times. I just want to say, some people have been asking, will these be available in the unpainted version, the sort of just the raw plastic urethane cast? And yes, they will. I'll offer them both as unfinished and finished like this, or custom designed to your desire. But I should mention that, having them finished is going to be a little bit expensive, actually, as this took quite a bit of time to do. I don't know the exact amount of time invested, but I know I spent probably over 3 hours a stand assembling and finishing those, and that comes mainly from just all the painting of all these lines on each of these individual blocks, basically. It's just a lot of line work to do, and I painted them about as fast as I reasonably can and be clean, and it surprised me. So if you're cost conscious, they'll be available unfinished, and you can finish them to yourself, your own desires, and and of course adding additional battle damage and rusting effects or things like that to these will add additional cost. But I felt like I wanted to finish them in a relatively sort of, I don't want to call them new, but an undamaged state, partly because adding the brass bronzish color is going to be, you know, it doesn't really rust in the traditional way that we think of metals do. You know, it'd get more of a verdigris finish, you know, I can chip these out and add battle damage, but, you know, they're relatively sturdy obstacles, and, you know, the customer in question, who I originally finished these for, has an Imperial Fortress that, you know, looks pretty clean as well. It's not, you know, chunks taken out of it and like it's been shelled or something like that. So I think this would be a better fit in that case, but of course these can be always modified. So I feel like I'm rambling a little bit this morning. It's a little early to shoot a video, but I really wanted to get this up as soon as I could today. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thank you once again for joining me. I do appreciate it. And feel free to leave questions and comments down below. Keep an eye on the channel. I always say this. I'll be back soon with another video, but it is true. I have a couple in the pipe really quick here. One I've already shot. It's a review of Composimold, which is a casting material, as well as some new tech to bring to my shipping. So keep an eye out for that, and I'll join you soon.